I am Carrie Maldonado, and you are listening to Leading with Heart. We talk about all things leadership, whether it's entrepreneurs, you're a manager, you're a leader, you're a business owner. We talk about the issues that come up when you are trying to lead with integrity, maybe walking your faith out in your business and doing the hard right thing. So thank you for joining us, and I'm really glad you're here because today we're going to kick it off with toxic bosses. And every time I talk about toxic bosses, I swear this and introverts is the most popular things I talk about. So I think everybody in the world has had a toxic boss, and most of the people who I interact with think they're introverts. And maybe I'll do introverted toxic people someday, but for today we're doing toxic bosses. And I'm doing this with a little bit of a spin because the toxic boss plays a really important role in most of our journeys. Most of us who have started our own business, whether we're consultants or entrepreneurs or business owners, a toxic boss likely played a role in our decision to work for ourselves. And so if you have encountered that toxic boss, you probably have a very clear definition of things you are never going to do. So I want to sort of talk about the lessons we learned from our toxic bosses. And the other thing I want to talk about is how we can become toxic bosses. Because I know in my leadership journey, there was a time way back when I was not the most easy to work for person. In fact, a group of my peers took me for a breakfast one time and sat me down and told me I was intimidating, which saddened me. Actually, it enraged me. But that was part of the problem. So we're going to talk about that. What if you are a toxic boss? So we're going to look at maybe the psychology behind these toxic people, how to deal with them if they're in our lives, and how to stop being them if they're us. All right. So I've identified 5 common toxic bosses. There are more, but the 5 that come up when I'm working with people tend to be the ever-loathed micromanager, the bully, the politico or schemer, if you will, the checked out, and the drama or gossipy person. So each of those sort of characters can make for horrible working environments. But there's the underlining issues are very similar what drives these people. So let's talk about the micromanager because they're probably the most benign of the toxic boss. And the micromanager is the person who will not let you do anything without them looking over it. I think we've all had a micromanager. And, I tend to not come down too hard on micromanagers as a coach because there is a time and a place for micromanaging. So, if you subscribe to the situational leadership model, you do need to micromanage people who don't know what they're doing or when they're new at a task. So I don't necessarily think micromanaging is always bad. Where I think micromanaging becomes aversive is when somebody is over managing somebody who knows what they're doing and is good at what they're doing. So essentially micromanaging looks like overly checking up on someone, giving instructions where instructions aren't needed, asking for more reporting than is needed. And it comes across as unpleasant and unwanted. And usually the people who are receiving micromanaging feel like it's unneeded, which, there could be a source of disagreement. So what I've found with micromanaging is a lot of times it's based on the beholder. If you are the boss who is being accused of micromanaging, typically I will start with the boss and say, let's start with expectations. I find it very helpful as a manager to explain to my staff how I operate because it's good for people to understand if you're frequently checking in or frequently asking for status updates. If they know that going in that's what's going to be happening or they know why you're doing it, it can erase a lot of the concerns. A lot of times people, if they come from a different work culture than yours or they've had a different manager before, I never had a micromanager until well into my career. All my managers until then had been completely hands-off. I mean, to a fault. And so my first micromanager was crazy. It was a shock to me. And And so it's good to lay out those expectations. Here's how I communicate. Here's how I want status updates, and here's why. If you have a micromanager, the best thing to do is assume good intent and ask them about it. And say, hey, I notice you seem concerned that I'm not understanding your instructions. I notice it feels to me like you maybe are worried I'm having issues completing this project. Do you want to talk about it? Do you have any concerns? Find out the concerns. And you'll either find out that maybe you've been making mistakes and they didn't have that hard conversation with you. Maybe they just like knowing where things are at more than your average bear. Or maybe they don't realize that you know what you're doing. Maybe they think they're being helpful. So with the micromanager, that's somewhat of an easy one where you just usually clarify it. Some people just need a higher amount of control than others. With my micromanager, he was just extremely controlling. And I finally had to tell him, hey, you're clipping my wings. Stop it. And he did. I don't necessarily recommend that unless you have a relationship with your boss, but that's a way you can deal with that. So micromanagers are not the worst kind of boss, at least they care. The opposite of the micromanagers are the checked out boss. So this is the boss who doesn't want to be there, gives you all the work, and never checks up and never supports you because they don't want to be there. Maybe they're looking for other work. Maybe they just are in over their head. Maybe they just don't care. I'll never forget one of the bosses I worked for. I would come in, he would try to have one-on-ones, but then when I was sitting there, he'd be surfing the internet while having the one-on-one with me. And it's really hard to get inspired if your boss seems like they're completely checked out. We all like, I think, working for a leader. We like having that person who is engaged and cares, because the fact is that the best work environments are one where you feel like you're part of something bigger than you. If your boss is checked out, it's really hard to get that feeling, right? So how you handle a checked out boss, again, it really depends on the relationship you have with that boss. If your boss has not been checked out in the past and suddenly they're just absent, and you have a good relationship, you can ask them about it and say, hey, I noticed your heart doesn't seem to be in. Is there anything I can do? Are you doing okay? Do you need to talk? That's appropriate if you have the relationship. If they've always been checked out and they just don't care about their job and they're your direct report, your options are kind of limited. You can see if you can go work for someone else. See if you can get transferred. Likely, if they've always been checked out, you could try talking to them, but what are the odds that they're going to change their behavior? Probably not too good. If it's terrible, you could talk to HR or their manager. But again, I tend to wonder how much they're going to be able to change. What I have done in the past when I've been in the situation is sometimes you just have to make your own motivation. So if your boss would rather be golfing than engage, maybe you take a leadership role. Not maybe formally, but you're not going to enjoy your job unless you feel like I said, you're part of something bigger than yourself. There's bigger significance to what you're doing. If you're not getting given that, go ahead and create it. That's the only way you're going to like your job, and the people around you are going to like your job. So it might be time for you to step up and see the bigger picture and communicate that and get your peers on board. Because reality is, those are your three options. Do that. Get everybody excited, create a kick butt team and love it there, or leave. That's the other option. Or just start complaining and get just as checked out as your boss. Now, if you do that, you won't enjoy your job and you might get fired. So I would say your choices, your better choices are either become a leader or leave and go somewhere else. So those are the checked out bosses. Now we're getting into the more, I would say, really toxic ones. So what about the drama or the gossipy boss? This is the person who's always talking about other people, who is bringing you into office drama, sharing things you might rather not know, wanting to know what you know, always thinking somebody's out to get them, and just behaving very inappropriately. And that, I have so little tolerance for that. It's really hard, and it's so destructive for the team. And again, there's not much you can do about someone else's bad behavior. I find what drives this behavior is usually fear and insecurity, wanting to seem like they're in the know more. It's really a fear. Every ugly behavior is usually driven from fear. Have you noticed? So there's that. But when you have that gossip person, how I've dealt with it is I'm pretty straightforward. You can say this nicely and humbly, but just say, oh, that's something I really don't want to know. Or I'm working on not knowing bad things about other people. You can say it like, oh, I'm trying to overcome a gossip problem, so I don't want to know anything. However you want to say it, that's a good way to avoid being caught in the drama or the gossip. The other thing, and you can steal this line if you want, because this was actually helpful. I used to be very concerned about conspiracies, and I used to be kind of that drama person, and that I always thought people were out to get me and there was a nefarious plot underway. When I got married to my husband, I would spend some time trying to figure out what he really meant when he would say something. And what he told me, and I'll never forget, he said, please don't assume ill intent. Whatever I say, because he has no filters. So he said, whatever I say, please assume I have good intent, because I do. And look at it that way. And if you're the drama person, or if someone's telling you drama, just say, I found I'm happier if I just assume good intent. I'm just going to assume they meant well and that it's not as bad as it sounds. The other thing I tell is if people would like to share with me something somebody said about me, I tell them it's my policy not to know this. Others' opinions of me are none of my business. And I am very strict about that. I don't feel I deserve to know, or I have a right to know, or I should know every bad thing people say about me. And I recommend you don't either, because it's no path to peace. It's no path to joy. And if you want to lead with joy and have like a happy life in your leadership, you cannot be overly concerned with what other people are saying or thinking about you that's ill. You can't be looking for validation from people, because you will never make everybody happy. So the drama and the gossip, don't engage, actively disengage. And if you're the person who, that's your defect, that's how, that's the thing you got to get over, then start by just reminding yourself, I do not share bad news. I do not gossip. I do not need to worry about it. And try and figure out, what's that fear? What are you so concerned about that you need to be in the know? What are you worried about? Are you worried about being left out? Are you worried that people don't think you're important? Are you worried that you might not be taken seriously? There's some fear there. Usually goes pretty deep. So if you are the gossip, then do some self-work and figure out why and what you need to do to get over it. So that was the micromanager, the checked out boss, the drama. Let's talk about the bully. The bully is just that person who is mean. He's a mean person. He takes joy in pointing out other people's shortcomings. I'm saying he, because I'm thinking of a specific boss, obviously, but I've run into them a lot. You're never going to please them. The bully's often a perfectionist. If you're not perfect, they're going to beat you up. They love calling out your failures in public. They're just unpleasant. And bullies rule through fear. Bullies get you going because it's just negative reinforcement. If you do everything they want you to do, maybe you won't get an unpleasant consequence. It's a highly effective form of reinforcement, but it makes you miserable. So if you're working for the bully, you can find yourself, it's a real head trip. You can find yourself buying into their low opinion of you. You can find yourself validating your worth based on if your bully's happy with you or not. If you're working for a bully, you can get physically sick, emotionally sick, spiritually sick. I think bullies are the worst kind of boss because they kind of prey on people's insecurities, and it works for them because you eventually believe you couldn't get another job. So you sit there and you keep taking their abuse because you don't think you can do any better. See bullies in personal lives, and you see bullies in the workplace, and you see a lot of bully bosses. And if you have a bully boss, first thing to do is, sit up straight and realize it's not your fault. If you're doing a good job, even if you're not doing a good job, nobody deserves to be berated and belittled as a human being if they're not doing a good job. But even if you're not doing a good job, you really want to work for a person who talks to people like that. So the way I look at it, if you have a bully, it's like plan B, escape hatch, is you're done. You're out of there. You can't keep working for a bully. So I look at it like, what's keeping you there? How soon can you get out? Now, knowing that, you're probably going to leave. You could try to talk to your bully. You could say, the only way to talk to a bully is to stand up to them. It's the only way. So at some point, you're going to have to put on your big person boots and stand up to the bully and say, I'm not going to be talked to that way. And you can, here's another phrase you can steal. Say something like this. I'm happy to talk to you about this when we can have a respectful conversation. That's all you say. You don't say another word until they calm down. I'm happy to talk to you about this when we can have a respectful conversation. I'm happy to discuss this with you when you stop using that tone with me. I'm happy to have this conversation when you stop swearing at me. That's, you're not focusing on they, them, it's you. I'm happy to talk to you. I'm happy to help you. I'm happy to give you this report. I'm happy to participate in the meeting, but I'm not going to do it when you're being rude to me. And you can have that conversation as an adult, as an employee, like you're within your rights to do that. So that's one thing you can do with your bully. You can take your bully aside and say, you're not going to have any staff left if you talk to people like this. That conversation may be a precursor to your exit, depending on your bully. If your bully is the owner of the company, he's probably not going to change. You never know. They might. If your bully is the owner of the company, you're likely looking at leaving unless you can stand up to. Sometimes bullies keep around the people who stand up to them. They develop this grudging respect and you live in it. It's up to you if you want to do that. Sometimes it can turn into an amicable relationship, but you're still going to have to watch your bully abusing everybody else. So if you've got a bully, the choices are really limited. If your bully's not the company owner, they're just another manager, and you have a decent HR person, you can bring HR or other managers or the company owner into it. Probably they're aware and they're just not dealing with it. If this person's really blatant, I don't know how much help they're going to be, but if they don't know, maybe everybody's too scared to complain. That's something you can do. Now, so if you are the bully, if you're the kind of person who blows up at your staff, you yell at people, you, goodness forbid, throw things. I've worked with people who, they've been my clients, and they're one way with me as their coach or as their consultant, and their staff tells me this person throws things at them, this person swears at them, this person calls them stupid. So they're flat out a bully. And yet, because of my relationship with them, I see another side. I see their heart. I see how terrified they are that they're not doing a good job. I see that they're terrified their company is going downhill and there's nothing they can do to stop it. They're frustrated with someone's performance. And, ironically, sometimes the bullies are scared to have hard conversations. They're like these pressure cookers. And if you were late every day, they haven't said anything every day. And then all of a sudden they blow up because a report's 5 minutes late. They don't have productive, healthy conversations when they should, so they blow up down the road. So if you are the bully and you blow up and you're yelling or you're getting loud or you're behaving badly, look at what you can do to be more productive and healthy. Why do you think it's okay to yell at people? What about your ego or your pride makes it okay to treat people that way? What is the fear that's driving it? Why is your, this fear is obviously overriding your fear of looking like a maniac with your staff. So, that's a pretty big down. So there must be a pretty big fear, a pretty big emotional response that's even bigger than, potentially losing your staff or looking like a lunatic. So think about that. What's behind this? What's the fear? What are you scared of? What conversations are you not having that you should be having that would avoid this huge emotional reaction and make you into a bully? And also look at, why are you holding on to the bullying? What's it getting you? Some of the bullies I've worked with, they sincerely feel like people would not do a good job unless this bully was on them. They have this kind of view of their employees, like their employees are lazy and weak, and it's only the bully's constant being on them that's ensuring everything doesn't fall to chaos. And their kind of warped logic is, well, things aren't chaotic and I'm being a bully, so I have to keep being a bully or else they'll turn into chaos. And sometimes the trick is just getting them to try one little positive thing and seeing that things don't fall apart. If you don't yell at people, maybe they'll still show up on time for the meetings. They'll still complete their work without you hitting them with a stick. So it's trust. It's letting go of the feeling that you're controlling things with your bad behavior, and learning how to use good behavior to get even better performance from your people. Then the last is the politico. This is your political schemer who, I worked with someone like this, and this is probably the most painful person that I worked with. Because these are the people that are always playing you. They're always, scheming. They're a little different than the gossip. They don't necessarily gossip, but they're out for power and control, and they're building allies and alliances, and they just feel like, they're doing coups. They're trying to undermine other leaders. They're trying to become the leader while undermining other people, and making teams and having people be on teams, and it's very counterproductive. If you've dealt with one of these people, they're kind of like a classic narcissist in a way. They see themselves as the supreme leader, even if they're maybe not the owner. They think they're best suited to be in that leadership role, and they cause so much destruction. They may make you feel like you're super special, and they will get you on their team, and they'll groom you, and they'll be all flattering to you so that you're on their team. But then you'll see that they do this to everybody. Flattery and false ego stroking. This is what they do. This is what they do to build friends, and then they do coups and destructive behavior. Now, the reason it's a problem is it's emotionally manipulative and draining, but it's really destructive to a company. If you have bad leaders or bad company owners, the way to fix that is not a coup. The way to fix that is not this political maneuvering. So if you have a political boss, or you're seeing political things like that, and I don't know, my my advice is run. Sometimes you can't run. What I tend to do is bring things into the light. All this bad behavior, this political scheming, it all happens in the dark. It happens behind closed doors, under the cone of silence. And I like to tell people, what I learned from this is don't put me under the cone of silence. I do not operate in the cone of silence. Don't tell me something that I can't talk about with other people. This will rule you out of the game. Now, it may damage your relationship with this politico, but honestly, that's probably okay, because you really don't have a relationship. They don't care about anyone but themselves. So to opt out of the game feels scary, because they'll make you feel like they're heading straight to the top and they want to bring you with them. I guess it's your tolerance for duplicity. If you can hang with that, that's your choice. But if you want to walk in the light, just tell them, I'm not going to operate in the dark. I'm not going to keep secrets. I'm not going to have meetings, planning things. Let's all talk about this together. Let's all solve the problem together. Let's work together to solve a problem. Let's not do teams. That's really the best way to handle it. So those are the 5 most common toxic bosses and toxic behaviors I've seen as leaders. And again, I'm not having this be my inaugural episode because I want to bag on toxic leaders. It's really because I want to help you understand how to not become that toxic leader. Because these people most of them are not sociopaths. They're not bad people. They're scared people. They're angry people. They're fearful people. And we all behave badly when we're scared and angry and fearful. So if you're in a leadership position, you're behaving badly. Look at that. Why? What are you afraid of? What are you fearful of? Where are you taking yourself too seriously? Where are you taking this job too seriously? I'm not saying we shouldn't do good work for our employer or for our company, but that doesn't define us. If you have a bad day, or your company or your department has a downturn, when you're leading with heart, you're leading the people. Bolstering the hearts and minds and spirits of your people is far more important than probably the things you're afraid of. The things you're afraid of are all ego or flesh driven. Those things are just looking bad, looking foolish. It's how you're seen in the eyes of people, or your pride or your ego. When those are taking over, that's when the bad behavior happens. So as you're walking in your leadership, you wear the world like a loose garment, and you let the opinions of others bounce off you, and you focus on doing the hard right thing. The hard right thing, valuing people, caring about people, seeing the gold in them and bringing that out. Having the hard conversations, telling someone when they're not performing rather than not, and then yelling at them or firing them. It's believing the best in people, bringing out the best, and making good things happen. That's leading with heart. And that is the end of our first episode. Please give your feedback, send comments, and ideas for future episodes, and I will be talking to you soon. Thank you.